Hey, you. Could you pass on a personal message from me to the old geezers at HQ? Tell them I said go to hell.
Ah, Smoker. He's the Javert to Luffy's Valjean, the Tommy Lee Jones to Harrison Ford. We can even say that Smoker is the Garp to Luffy's Roger. Smoker is a simple character. He's a marine, he's got a cool power, his club meant it was endgame, and he hunts pirates with relentless and extreme prejudice. In part 1, he was a very intimidating character. Whenever he showed up, it meant it was bad news for the Straw Hats. His design is like a thug for justice. It's like if Officer Nanu from Pokemon had smoke powers. But his look, combined with his smoking habit and power, makes him stand out from other characters. He's also the first Logia threat our heroes face, and to this day, Luffy still hasn't technically defeated Smoker, only eluded him. Now what makes Smoker stand out more is his confliction with the very government he swore to serve. He does things by his version of justice, which might upset his superiors a little, but it lets Smoker do what he wants outside of the law, which makes him that much more interesting. But sadly, Smoker took a little bit of a turn in part 2. His design is still under debate whether it's an improvement or not, but his track record and overall usefulness in the series suffered. With the concept of Haki realized, Smoker lost some of his intimidation, and his relentless nature has calmed down. But what makes it worse is that in the Punk Hazard arc, Smoker is kind of a joke. His heart swap with Tashigi is funny, but when major events go down, that impact still weighs over his other moments from the arc. He couldn't even do much against Virgo. He got a few flashy moves in on him, but Smoker was outclassed and had to get Law to finish the fight. And when it came to Doflamingo, well, about that. That's what dragged Smoker down. He was one of Luffy's most dangerous enemies, but he seems to have gotten weaker in the grand scheme of things. Now Oda seems to be building him up to be an ally to Luffy, and while that might be great for his overall character, he certainly had a rough start in part 2. Sorry Smoker, but your white snake isn't long enough to get higher on this list.
Oh my god, he's so goddamn cool!
Yes! For those of you that watched me for a while, you know that Kaido is my favorite Yonko by a long shot. Look at this man! Look at this beast! God, before I fanboy anymore, let's go over the King of the Beasts. So Kaido is unlike other One Piece villains. In fact, he's quite different from most anime villains in general. Throughout his life as a pirate, Kaido has been captured and ordered to execution multiple times, but every time he's sentenced to die, he always breaks free. Not because of his will to live, but because his body or soul prevents any form of execution from happening. In fact, his life has made him pick up a hobby that no other character in the series can match in terms of uniqueness: attempted suicide. Kaido might be one of, if not the most physically powerful being in the One Piece world. But unlike other villains, he's not trying to find an equal in power, nor is he trying to conquer the world. He's just bored with all the power he has. He's tired that nothing gives him excitement anymore. He wants to wage war on the world, an event that has been built up since Marineford, just so that he can try to both die and cure his boredom. And he has the power to back that up. Through Caesar and Doflamingo, Kaido has an army of artificial devil fruit users at his command. Now most crews have a few fruit users. Kaido though, it's the majority. This kind of force is unprecedented in the series, as it only makes Kaido look more powerful. And if anyone doubts his power, just watch his introduction in the series. He jumps off an island in the sky, crashes into the ground, and then immediately gets up agitated, not because the crash hurt him, but because he didn't die. And from there, we can assume that he destroyed the prestigious Kid Alliance. What also separates Kaido from others is his personality and how his design, which is freaking amazing, adapts to it. Kaido appears to act like most super powerful anime villains. but he also takes everything at face value, usually shrugging off possible threats like Luffy and Law's alliance. And when Kaido drinks, his mood sways back and forth, showing a side of villains we don't see too often. Now, even though I love Kaido, he still has to be held back for a few reasons. The first reason is because we haven't seen everything he can do yet. Kind of like with Rebel and Bakken, Kaido's spot on the list suffers due to not being too involved in the story yet. Another negative is that when Shanks intercepted Kaido before Marineford, Shanks was able to make it to the battlefield with no scratches whatsoever. And when you start to think about how he made it to the battlefield undamaged when he just met with this man of all people, it kind of hurts his reputation as this all-powerful beast. But I'm sure that as the story goes along, Kaido will only get better. And whether or not he has a devil fruit or a transformation or whatever he has up his non-existent sleeve, it'll be one hell of a fight for the Straw Hats. Here's to the future, my lordship. May your horns bless this story. You ever have that one family member you don't like? The one you just wish would go away because of the mental or emotional turmoil they put you through? Well, if you do, and you live in the One Piece world, good freaking luck, because your family is most likely the Vinsmoke family, and you're screwed for the rest of your life. This group of villains, at the time of this video, is the most recent group to antagonize the Straw Hats. Now, this family has one of the best concepts Oda has ever conceived. The Vinsmoke family is, and I'm being as simple as possible here, Royal Nazi Modified Assassins. Just let that sink in. Call of Duty gave you zombie Nazis? Please try these super Nazis that specialize in the art of murder, have great power over others, have a moving castle, and have a lab ready for the wonders of science to change innocent lives forever.
Hail science!
How could you go wrong? We'll get there, but let's talk about the family. So the Vinsmoke family, excluding Sanji and his mom, are full of genetically modified soldiers ready to spread their power and influence across the world. From the moment you see them, you can tell that they're strong, and what also adds to their personality is that they also have the Celestial Dragon mindset. They are a royal power, so if you don't show respect, you're most likely dead. And with their royal powers, they convince even the lowest of the minions to sacrifice themselves. They're already a step up from the Celestial Dragons due to the family's design, backstory, and personal connection to Sanji. But with that being said, I need to also say that the Vinsmoke family, despite having a brilliant concept, is executed poorly in terms of character. Aside from Reiju and Judge, the male siblings are some of the blandest rehashes of royal brat stereotypes I've ever seen. You can tell me all day long that their powers and design make them the most interesting men on the planet, but until I see actual character from them, I'm not buying it. Now, their individual personalities are a bit different, but the overall character is again a rehash of the royal brat, and the sad thing is that aside from their abilities, they bring nothing new to the table. You've seen these villains before, and for me, I've seen better versions of these villains before. They were the kind that were engaging and invested in their work. In One Piece, the Vinsmoke men are there to make Germa look powerful and cool. Well, bravo to them, they accomplished that, but if that's your best and only quality, you do not leap off the page for me. Now, in their defense, Reiju is an interesting character with interesting abilities that likes the royal power, but isn't a tool with it. What makes her tragic is that her mother practically sacrificed herself so that Reiju could have emotions. However, she still has to obey Judge completely, and because of that is as guilty as her family in the art of murder. Speaking of which, Judge is a proud leader, always taking pride in his family's accomplishments and power. And unlike some villains, he actually cares for his family. Well, except for Sanji. But it's interesting to see an evil parent actually be a parent. However, the largest problem for me is this. Whenever they're on page during Big Mom's arc, they steal the show and become the talk of the town. Like a good group of villains. But the mere second they're not in the story, all that attention and impact is gone. It slaps you in the face and then goes off to Big Mom's crew. Whole Cake Island's arc has the hype split in half. You can appreciate both sides, but Big Mom is the more interesting and primary villain. So the Vinsmoke family, try as they might, just can't measure up and are left in the dust by Big Mom's forces. Now, this doesn't mean I hate the Vinsmokes. Hell, they're up here at number 13. They're doing something right with the concept, background, powers, and overall impact of the fanbase, but my largest concerns are their individual personalities and the fact that they need to be on page just to have an impact, instead of having that lingering intimidation like other villains. Unfortunately, this list is one territory they'll never conquer at this rate. This is honestly one of the few entries on my list where I found it hard to talk about. Because for every pro, there's a con. And while some cons can be outbalanced by the pro and vice versa, Gecko Moria somehow has this equal ground. Like all the good he does for the series is equally matched by his flaws. So let's start with backstory. Gecko Moria was a warlord of the sea. He was an ambitious pirate and set out to the New World, only to be crushed by Kaido and have his entire crew slaughtered. Well, it's the thought that counts. After his defeat, Moria realized he needed a new plan in order to become king of the pirates, and that was to make his own zombie army, created by his crew and powered by uniquely his own devil fruit. Moria's devil fruit allows him to manipulate shadows to suit all his combat needs. It's like Pride from FullMetal Alchemist, minus the child psychopath and more of whatever the hell this is. Seriously, what is he? His design, I dare say, is the craziest and most unique design in the series. Hell, I dare say that anime in general doesn't have many villains that can compare to his looks. So are there other positives to him? Absolutely. His ship, the Thriller Bark, was one of the largest pirate ships in the world, and along with his crew, each with their own personalities and backstories, helps build up Moria's impact. There's a looming presence throughout the Thriller Bark storyline, and when we finally get to Moria, he doesn't disappoint. For the most part. He's a negative soul that lives only for himself. He's experienced the new world firsthand, and you can tell that weight is still on his shoulders. He's also one of the few villains that actually predicted how the Straw Hats would be defeated thanks to their inexperience and overconfidence. So Moria is an interesting character with a backstory. That doesn't sound too bad, but then come the weaknesses. Thriller Bark was, oddly enough, a lively environment, and each antagonist it offered was unique. But my problem was that when you put all those personalities in the same room with Moria, he looks stale. The only interesting things he brings are his plans and design. And even though his powers are interesting, his battles are a little shy of that. While the initial and last encounter with Luffy is kind of satisfying, it's overshadowed by his ultimate weapon, the Oars Corps, and its fight with the Straw Hat crew. And when Moria gets the chance to be awesome again in Marineford, he's able to land a blow on Oars Jr., but is then humiliated by Jinbei, and is almost killed by Doflamingo and a few pacifistas. A lot of people in the story call Moria weak, and when they're kind of right, it does take some cool points away. Which is a shame. I do like Moria. I like his power. I like what he stands for. I like how his regret and suffering in the New World influences his plan and character. He was on the right path, but then it got overshadowed by other factors, and Moria just never got his chance to shine again. Now, hopefully he comes back and at least has one more awesome moment. But as of right now, Gecko Moria is left in the shadows, and it's one he can't even control.
While I'm in charge, those without money will die! Now do you understand me, you worms?
Oh, Arlon, you lovable, murderous, torturing, emotionally scarring racist. What would One Piece be if it weren't for you? Actually, it might be the same, but with less fish! Now I have a confession. I told you all before that my first introduction to the series was Don Krieg vs. Luffy. However, that didn't mean that I always followed the series. In fact, I didn't get fully immersed in it until Luffy fought Wapol and we got to the Alabasta arc. Which is weird considering Arlon's arc was right after Don Krieg's. But my point is that even though I didn't follow One Piece then, I heard of the tales of Arlon. When I was a kid, I always heard how he was the baddest of the bad, how he was the best villain One Piece had, well, at the time. He was a legend. So when I finally got to his arc, I have to say one simple thing. The legends were true. Remember when I said that a lot of the early One Piece villains had a shared problem, and that was they weren't remembered a lot or they weren't intimidating? Arlong is the exact opposite. This is the villain that Hody Jones literally dreams he could be. Arlong used to belong to the Sun Pirates, but when his captain died by human hands, he hates humanity for the rest of his days. Even when you first see Arlong and you don't know his past, you can tell that he's been through tough times. You can tell that this is a character with a superiority complex, but at the same time, you understand why he has it. Now in analysis terms, let's start with his design. And I love it. Oda's design of the fishman is fantastic. I think we all had that fantasy of what human fish would look like, but Oda just takes that vision and turns it up to 11. And when it comes to Arlong, his design is so simple yet so unique. Just take a human, give him a mullet, make him purple, give him a sharp nose, and boom! Arlong. But Arlong didn't make it this far on looks alone. If he did, he'd be number 0. But Arlong was the first of many things in the series. He was the first real complex villain. He was the first villain that was truly unforgivable. He was the first villain to have a personal connection to a main character. He was the first villain that brought actual risk in the story that seemed to play it safe for a while. And he was the first villain that inspired the walk. You know what I'm talking about. You know all those epic walks the crew has? Yeah, that started here. I think that's why a lot of people remember Arlong. He was a villain that literally changed the game on how to act like a villain in One Piece. So are there any flaws? If I had to find any, it's that I think his fights could have been more entertaining. Don't get me wrong, Luffy defeating Arlong was extremely satisfying, but kind of like with Moria, it's the ending that overshadows the actual battle for me. Not only that, but his crew doesn't really make him that much more intimidated. Seriously, when I saw them, I thought, oh hey, more fishmen, neat. Not, oh god! Fishmen! The Straw Hats are all going to die! Complaints aside though, Arlong is a villain that got better with time. In terms of comparison, or fleshing out a backstory, or just rewatching him, Arlong is a villain that has endured a lot of pain. And for that, he's a civil fish hero. Or villain. Or... yeah, nice nose.